Hello, welcome back to another episode of Detection at Scale. Today, I'm here with Chris Watkins, who's a staff cloud security engineer at WP Engine. Chris, what's going on, man?
Hey, Jack, good to be on the show. How are you?
I'm good. I had to qualify your level just so people know that you're a 10Xer.
Oh, my favorite thing in the world is these fancy titles.
Oh man, titles are everything, right? I'm super excited to jump in today. I love WP Engine. I think it's a great company. It's been super impactful. And I'm sure there's a lot of really interesting things that you're really tasked with protecting and monitoring, things like that. And let's just kind of dive into it. So, how are you thinking about logging? So, I imagine that you probably have tons of customers doing some pretty crazy stuff with their web applications, and logging across all the various platforms is probably pretty challenging. So, why don't we start with the pipelines? And let's talk a little bit about your experience there and what's been working.
At WP Engine, we have kind of like a unique situation. We use all three major cloud vendors. That's going to be Azure, GCP, AWS. We're a K8 shop. So when it comes to logging what's going on in the platform, also in our individual cloud providers, we have to create our logging pipeline. So we have to get very creative. As a common thing at WP Engine, use creativity. Use the tools that's at your disposal natively at the cloud providers. And that's exactly what we've done. The team is amazing. The team has done a lot of great work with that. Ian, Josephine, Britt, done a lot of great work. When it comes to hooking back into the cloud, hooking back into our SaaS pipelines, one thing that we've done is built out natively using Python and Golang, going API to API connection. We grab the logs at the source. We have chosen a common schema format, ECS, Elastic Common Schema format, where we transform the logs into ECS, and then we bring them into BigQuery, where all the magic happens as far as threat detection, querying, our security analytics, where we do a lot of our threat use cases from there.
And then you're doing detection rules in BigQuery or on the way, or how are you thinking about that?
Yes, sir. Once we get our logs into our BigQuery data lake, data warehouse, from there we do run our detections in SQL. We have threat detections that match our business use cases per the logs that we're collecting. So whether cloud logs, SaaS logs, or different application logs like Cloudflare, once they go into BigQuery, that's when we come together and make threat detections based on those use cases.
And how's it been using schema like ECS? Are there any challenges with fields, or has it been smooth sailing?
It's so far it's been smooth sailing. I think the good thing about coming together and having like a unified schema, it works great for normalization. We know IP address is going to be IP address across all of our log fields, no matter whether we're pulling from, whether it's Azure log source, AWS log source, or SaaS log source, because we had that normalization. And when it comes to tying together multi-correlation log sources, that means just looking for the same detection logic or using multiple different log sources. It's great because it's again those key value field pair names are going to be the same throughout. It's going to have a lot of consistency.
And you mentioned that you guys are in all three clouds, right?
Yes, sir.
How are you bridging the gap between the clouds? Is there any trick or any tip that you can share just in terms of like moving data across in an efficient way?
I can say this: a good tip and a trick to share. I think is probably is coming for a lot of us is understanding what is at your disposal as far as the cloud native tooling natively. Using things like Azure Event Hub, SNS, SQS, and then PubSub, which is Google's version of all three of those as well. Then having a good, robust API gateway to send and receive those logs. And again, once you kind of centralize your storage, per se, in one of the clouds, it kind of transfers over to all of them. And what I mean by that is if you're centralizing your log storages in Azure, if you're running a large AKS form, if you're centralizing a lot of those logs in Blob, then having something like an event hub notification to send those logs outbound to an API gateway where we have another listener picks up on the logs. And then again, we'll do a transformation in place to an ECS format, and then it dumps it back out into GCP. Really just using the, I guess like Gartner terms, but like an ETL pipeline, whatever the best practice ETL pipeline for that specific cloud vendor. We just kind of adopt that at our scale and then bring it all back home and set up a GCP BigQuery.
So the strategy is use the native message buses, blob storage, and then you're pulling it all into GCP though, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, got you. That's good. Yeah, I mean, I think it tends to be a really smart strategy to use all the native tooling because it's super reliable. Like it's has redundancy and it's robust, it's scalable. A lot of times it's serverless as well, so you're not stuck there. I assume you're managing the pipeline as code in some way, right?
Absolutely. We have our own stand on detection as code, both of our detections and unlocking pipelines. We have it inside of GitHub. We have it inside of virtual control with GitHub. So GitHub actions as well. We have some CI/CD runners, and took that kind of methodology from software engineering team and then applied it to the concepts that we have for security use cases. And it really helps for cross-team collaboration when you have like kind of the same CI/CD tech stack.
With like your engineering org?
Yes, sir.
And what are you declaring in? Is it something like Terraform or like what type of language are you collaborating in?
Yes, sir. For ISC, we are a Terraform shop. So when we deploy out our infrastructure as code, it is being executed via Terraform.
That's a great practice to just bake in general, and I love that you're all doing CI/CD on the rules and things like that too. Has there been any challenge with using SQL for everything? I mean, SQL is kind of gets unnecessary hate, I think, in security. But like, how has your experience been in using that as like your sole tool for detection?
It's been interesting, especially with BigQuery. It really challenged you to understand not only the security use cases on why you're collecting the logs, but also the business use cases and business logic on what drives those threat detections. I said it to say it can help with cost. BigQuery can bring a lot of big costs into your organization as well if you don't optimize your queries. Try to stay away from a lot of select star. Be very specific about the tables that you're querying. Again, just understanding that I collected this data for a very specific reason. When it comes to querying for threat detection or maybe threat hunts, you have to understand the data that lies there for that use case. Again, so you're not getting billed for being very imaginative with your queries.
Are there any other tips you have for doing like large scale queries? So let's say you're doing like really big threat hunt on a table and you don't quite know the date range for something. Like what's been your strategy for avoiding the big cost and making sure that you're effectively able to use the data you've collected without spending a lot?
Yeah, for that right there, if you have a large amount of data that you want to go through and you don't want to have that tax on that bill, something that we're starting to see a lot is the use, of course, of partition tables. Again, being very selective about what tables you're actually selecting from. When it comes to, I wouldn't say like tips and tricks, it's really just using best practices from like the data team, working with them to understand how they're using to optimizing their queries or what kind of strategies that they use, and then applying those same strategies and concepts over to our security use cases. Again, partition your tables, understand what exactly you're looking for in those columns so you can stay away from the mighty select star, so you can save money on those compute resources. And then I would say choosing a good schema as well, so you can understand again what key value pair things you're going to keep using over and over again. I think that'll help speed up a lot of your threat detection efforts and incident response as well when it comes to digging through petabytes of data inside of your data lake or data warehouse.
When we think about the different types of logs, so you talked a lot about cloud logging and cloud platforms, but I think when you start going either into the SaaS world or into like the on-prem world, it gets a little tricky where there's like a lot of inconsistency. So what's been your strategy there for either of those SaaS or hybrid systems?
I think we all are familiar with like the SaaS audit log of shame. Like depending on your the SaaS vendor and or your your subscription option, you may have audit logs available to you, and they may be in an okay decent state for the have confidential sections. But my experience that has been like hit and miss. The thing again, probably sound like a broken record. When it comes to like collecting log sources, especially SaaS logs, where there's like a unforeseen what schema is the map to? Do we have some structure there? What kind of visibility can we get out of these log sources? It's good to have a structured schema that you want to transform them into, and then start to understand the key value pair fields in there, whether it's going to be IP address, ASN blocks, your usernames, but key value pair fields that you know you're going to need to make confidentiality detections. Get used to them early in the adjusting phase, and then when it comes to actually querying those logs, you have some type of common use cases that you're familiar with, common patterns of execution.
Yeah, that's right. What about like enrichments? How have you tackled enrichments? Is it more on the warehouse, like when you're running the rules? or is it more of using the pipeline? I think there's been instances of both. I'm curious what camp y'all are in.
Right now, it is happening on the inside of the warehouse, inside of BigQuery. But some of the log sources that we're starting to bring in now, especially the SaaS logs, we're starting to enrich them early in the ingestion pipeline before it hits to the BigQuery warehouse. And we're doing that with probably sending one word here, but metadata correlation, taking our HR system data, taking the rest of our Google Workspace data, and doing correlations on those event fields as well. So when we get an alert comes in about a user entity, it already has that other cross correlation enrichment from other log sources as well.
Yeah, it's a game changer. I mean that.
It does help.
Yeah. How long has this system been around? Like, where is this all relatively new? Have y'all had this? Like, what's the origins of using a system like BigQuery and building in this like heavy code-based CI/CD mindset? Like, where does that come from?
I think that what it comes from is just having again like great strong leadership team, like very great strong principal engineers that were there before me, and them having awareness to understand that the problems that we're facing as a security organization, I think we have sometimes a bad habit of thinking these are very security specific problems. We do have a fight, I guess, within that equation, but most of the times the things that we're trying to solve has been solved by another part of the business. I think there's a lot of great innovation going on with BigQuery at the time. GCP is again, it's kind of the main cloud in which we consolidate other parts of our tech stack into. And when it comes to having a scalable data warehouse or data lake or where they're calling it, a lake house, BigQuery kind of was the winner at that time point.
Say data like too many times and then Snowflake corrupt's going to call you. I'm just kidding.
Oh my goodness. I want to assist in deceased.
Yeah, I mean, all jokes aside, I mean, it's been interesting to see the evolution of how those tools can be used for security, and tools like BigQuery were always the tech that we wanted as an alternative to some monolithic SIEM that was just
Absolutely.
trying to scale, So evolution's been powerful.
It is. The fact that we can throw, I mean, we collect a large amounts of data. The fact that we can throw petabytes of data into BigQuery is just besides the cost. There's no issue with scale. There's no issue with optimization. That's the great magic using it. It just works. I think regardless of the cloud that you're in, you say the same thing about Azure with Data Factory, Azure Blob. Also, with Amazon's doing a lot of great work now with S3 and the security data lake as well. So, like it's interesting the convergence of things that again other parts of the organizations used before, like the data engineering team, some of the maybe the DevOps team have used some of these data lakes or these high compute warehouses before, and again, security is just now. I won't say just now, but like maybe the last 4 years, really catching up with that trend.
Where do you think things are going to go from here? So the evolution of, monolithic kind of no detection as code to this like data warehouse, highly scalable, everything is code. Like, where do you see the next wave really going with detection and getting more creative and defensive?
I really like Queer.io and Ambient Logic, of course, Panther, what you guys are doing. I think you're going to see a lot of adoption with security vendors in the future, having custom lakehouse warehouse solutions, where not only are they going to collect their own data, whether it's an EDR vendor or maybe it's a giant network vendor, where they're going to collect their own data, but you can also ingest other log sources, other telemetry sources into this data lake or this data fabric as well to get the added value of what a SIM would give you, or it could augment a SIM cost as well. I don't think that SIM is completely dead. I think SIM is going to be smart enough to transform themselves into this space as well and continue to grow with it. I think high scalable database and data lake solutions are definitely here to stay for the future.
What about on the response side? So you all have a really great mantra around detection as code and pipelines as code, but what about response? What types of things you're working on there, and what sort of common workflows have you automated?
So same thing, same mantra. We have a saying: if you have to do it more than once or twice, go ahead and get ready to automate that, make a story. And same mantra. When it comes to doing response automation throughout our cloud environment, without our platform, or with our SaaS doing like Cloudflare, we codify that with the APIs as much as possible. Whether it's going to be Golang, which I am, that is not my area at the moment, or Python, which is my area. And that's kind of the options that we have. Like Cloudflare, for example, if there's some like offering IP addresses that are causing disabling DNS addresses that can lead to account takeovers or domain takeovers. Instead of manually going through those thousands of IPs, those hundreds of IPs of DNS records, just get the Cloudflare API. Go ahead and identify. This is an example of one thing that I help write. Go ahead and identify the IP addresses that you want to delete. Make sure you do it in a dry run. So the script is spread out. Here's the thousands of IPs that we're going to delete. Add another part of the function of the script to go ahead and then match those IPs to what we did know to be the known IPs that need to be deleted. And then once that confirmation came back to be okay, just go ahead and move forward with deleting those IPs. Probably take a manual time to make it be maybe 2 or 3 days, so they need to be done in like just a couple of hours. And that's a repeatable process that every time we need to go into the Cloudflare environment and do massive changes like that, we now have like a codified framework that can be adopted.
Is there any part of it where there's like a human in the loop to say, okay, this is about to happen?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Is it every time?
Absolutely. Human verification is a must. 2PR is a must as well, just to make sure it's CYA. And in security, it's okay sometimes to make mistakes, but you do not want to bring down a production instance or mess up production. So it's again, we do jar runs and send the results to Slack or a Jira ticket. With 2PR, say, hey, these are the IPs, or this is what we need to add or delete from a cloud environment or delete from a SaaS tool. Yeah, this is correct. And then just go ahead and continue the rest of the script off from there.
Sounds good. It sounds like a highly efficient, well-oiled machine, which we love to see on the show. We love automation. We love cloud scalability. It's what builds a sustainable program. Has the team been small throughout this journey? Like, I assume because you've automated so much, you have the luxury of focusing on other things and running as a lean team. Is that proven to be true?
Yes, sir. We are a lean, mean shop. I think I am security engineer hire number. I think I am the fifth one on the team. We're a global team with individuals both in the U.S. and overseas as well. We are a lean team. We do depend on, again, just leveraging what's there from a cloud native standpoint to deliver scalable, robust solutions that can be adopted across the org. A lot of the time, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. A lot of time, either another engineer has done it already from a coding standpoint, and you can just use that as a building block. And a lot of time, your cross-departmental teams have done a lot of that work going to market, and customer success there for platform innovation as well. You can just piggyback off of that.
So before we hit record today, you made a comment about, yeah, I'm doing okay in this crazy, world of incident response. And I wanted to ask you, like, outside of security, like, how do you balance the stress of incident response, and how do you like recharge from that and avoid getting burned out?
Mental health and physical health, it's amazing how those go together. Has been a crown jewel for me. Getting up in the morning, taking care of my whole body, mentally, physically, and spiritually, before getting online to do my daily tasks, and then also just prioritizing that throughout the day. During COVID, I mean, I had a bad just sitting down on like 8-9 hours and then getting paged on calls like, oh, I'm going crazy. Honestly being active, taking care of yourself, and then being around community. That is huge. Being around community on LinkedIn, being around community, maybe at your local IFAC or ISA chapter, being around like-minded individuals that are inside of the weeds like you, and really be there to help one another, foster, of course, communication, ideas, but to hear each other out, man, like, hey, man, I had a crappy day. This vulnerability kicked our butts out of our repos, man. Like, it was terrible.
What specifically on the morning routine, like, can you share? Like, so someone listening can be like, all right, that's a good idea. I'm going to implement that. Like take us through it a little deeper.
Oh, absolutely. I always listen to sound too corny. Like, just start off like a morning like mantra. I know this profession a lot, and me specifically as well. Like, imposter syndrome can like creep up and come out of nowhere. So just telling yourself like, hey, I'm good enough to be here. Put the hours in, you're going to be okay. Then from there, just say my prayers, do a little bit of reading, just to get the brain going. And for now, I'm got my Peloton bike back here, so I get on my Peloton, get a good little 30 minutes in, and go get my kids up, cook my little breakfast, take my babies to school.
I love it. It's important, man. It's like the routine keeps you centered. I do similar things in the morning with daily mantras and journaling, and just like flushes your brain out. You move a little bit. It's just good. It's all good, man. I'm a huge advocate for morning workouts. And the consistency is so good for just managing your overall stress level and your
Absolutely.
cortisol and things like that. So yeah, that's all great advice. And I love how you rounded it out with talking about community, talking about connection to other folks and sort of having the shared experience of going through it and working through that stuff and talking about common vulnerabilities and things actually in security that you oftentimes like can't really share publicly, but there's like
Yeah.
groups where you can like have more of a trusted conversation about things like breaches and vulnerabilities and things that were really hard. So yeah, that stuff's important, man. That's good advice. Could talk about this stuff in the whole episode. I
It should. It should. That is that should happen. I'm trying to work with a buddy now to do like a Nashville cyber like mental health club, like
hmm.
monthly. Probably start off with some walking, like little
Yeah, man.
little
Run
walk.
club.
Working, we can work up to that.
Okay, this has been fun, man. We love ending with three pieces of advice. So given that you and the team have gone so deep into automation and code and scalability, what are three pieces of advice you can give other engineers who are listening that might be in the middle of a similar project or going down this path?
Community. I was 2 years ago and I was trying to learn like what is a login pipeline. You just had him on your show, like Josh Lumbari. Like this guy's out there that built you built a tool. There's guys out there that have built similar tools and projects. Do not be afraid to lean on them. And me personally, LinkedIn spam their inbox like, hey, like how does this work? Another good piece of advice is lean on the rest of the business units. Your security is not a one man band, it's not a one man show. Again, a lot of our use cases, what we're doing with centralized logging, democratizing detections, building out a response platform. You'll be amazed at what your SRE, your cloud team, your DevOps team, what those developers have created within our own warehouse, within our own repos that they're willing to share. And then that also fosters support when things break, or where people leave the company. It's a technology pipeline that they're familiar with and that can grow with them as well. I think the last piece of advice for number three, man, have fun. I haven't seen anybody in their security because they were told to. It's because it's a deep, thriving passion. Remember that you chose to be here. It's a passion for you. Have fun with it. It's going to be agonizing nights. There's going to be some anxiety as well, but man, let's have fun with it. Let loose. Have fun with it. Be cordial, of course, but let's have fun.
I love it. Thanks so much, Chris, for coming on. This was really fun. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the episode today and learned a few things. I definitely did.
Absolutely, man. Big fan of the show, and thank you for having me on.
Of course, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir.